All right, good evening, everyone. It's March 26, 2024, and the time is 6:09 p.m. I now call this meeting of the Urban Design Commission to order. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting of the Urban Design Commission is conducted via remote participation. We will make recordings available upon request as soon as possible after the meeting. My name is Madison Anthony, and I'm filling in for the co-chairs for tonight's meeting. And I'll start with a roll call of the commission members present. Andrew Arpa,
Present.
Tim Talon,
Present.
and Tim Hood.
Present.
All right, and moving on to some general business. Let's see. It looks like we have the minutes for the February 2024 meeting up for approval. Are there any comments, any edits on the minutes? Anything you need changed?
I did not see any edits or have any comments.
I don't know that I was at that meeting though, so I'm not sure I can vote to approve those minutes.
It says you were absent.
Yeah, I don't know that I can. I don't know if we can.
Oh,
I think we have to
true.
just vote on them next time, maybe.
Okay, in that case, let's continue the vote for these meetings until the next. Oh, there's Sarah.
Hello, Sarah.
Get there.
Hi, Sarah. Oh, I can't
Working
hear
out the
you.
audio.
Okay, why don't we finish the minutes while she works on getting her audio sorted out? Is there a motion to continue the minutes to our next meeting, which would be April 9th, 2024?
So motioned.
All right. The minutes will be continued till then, and let's give Sarah a couple minutes to sort her audio problems out. Sarah, do you have a headset? Sometimes it only works if I have a headset on my computer.
Looks like she's actually
She's
muted.
on mute.
Yeah.
Wow, no.
Still can't hear you. Okay. All right, so it looks like she's having some technical difficulties still. Okay. It looks like the next item on the agenda is the design review for 246 Broadway. Will the members of the 246 Broadway team raise their hand and I'll promote you?
Testing. Can you guys hear me now?
Oh,
Yep.
perfect. Yep.
Right. Okay. Now that all the important stuff has been done. Thank you, Madison.
No problem.
Good evening.
Hello?
Hi. So, want me to start, Madison?
Yep, whenever you're
All right.
ready.
Yeah, Attorney Adam Dash, 48 Grove Street in Somerville. I'm here representing Amanandi Construction LLC. With us should be Deepak Amanani, manager of the LLC, if you could promote him. And you see Katya Podsiadlo from Verdant Landscape Architects, and we also need Mark Nielsen from Peter Quinn Architects to be promoted. 246 Broadway is in the MR5 zoning district. It is on a pedestrian street district. It is in the half-mile transit area. The applicant seeks to demolish the existing structure, which the Historic Preservation Commission found not preferably preserved, so there was no demolition delay imposed. And he seeks to construct a new 5-story general building that's mixed use with first floor commercial, 10 residential units, of which 2 will be affordable in 5 stories. There will be no parking and none is required. And the building proposed is dimensionally compliant. What we need is a site plan approval for the building because it's in the MR zone and special permit for the residential use, but that's it. With that, I turn it over to Mark. If you want to show the plans. You're muted, Mark.
Thanks, Adam. Let me just share my screen. I hope everyone can see the Google map here pulled up. Just a quick spin for orientation purposes. Foss Park is here, and our site is across the Broadway from Foss Park. This is the structure that would be taken down to make way for the proposed project. View up and down the street. This location. So this is our proposed 5-story building that Adam just mentioned. And he ran through what the project yield is on the site. The lot area is 3,660 square feet, which is small enough to require us to have 1,500 square feet of residential gross square feet per dwelling unit. It also is on a pedestrian street, so we are required to put commercial space on the ground floor. And the sidewalk is about 15 feet wide. So the front of the building adheres to the 2-foot required setback because the 12-foot setback off the curb doesn't affect us. And I'll just skip through the landscape plans for now. And go to the images. So we have a commercial entrance here. Here's the commercial space. This little vestibule going into the commercial has been assigned for our arts and creative enterprise space. Probably it has a couple of walls inside here, which would be a gallery space. And then the entrance to the residential units is pushed back into the property so that it's just within the 15-foot setback. And here is another view looking down on it with some of the neighbors or butters identified. Montgomery Avenue here. We would be closing a curb cut, I believe. We wouldn't close our neighbor's curb cut though. Going through the first floor plan. So we have, this is the main floor plan here. This is street level. And then in the back, we go up half a level and down half a level. So going down half a level, you get to this hall, and a story above that is this hall above. So we have a basement unit here. And then we have the ground floor unit is above the basement unit, which is half a story above the first floor level. This is that ACE space we were just mentioning. On the upper levels, the building just zones out pretty straightforward. There's a front unit and a back unit. And there's an elevator and fire stair core. Windows are primarily set on the front and the back of the building. We do have a notch in the building in both the front and the rear unit that accommodates windows for second bedrooms. And on the 5th floor, we set the building back 10 feet from the face of the main building below in order to meet the 10-foot step back requirement of the MR5 zone. And on the outdoor spaces are assigned to the common roof deck up here with the head house. And some planting that Katya will get into later. Front facade. This is that deck off of the 5th floor unit, and we've chosen to have a solid rail there for privacy. Whereas on the upper levels, we open the railing a bit for light plants. This is the left side of the building. Where these windows are recessed back several feet from the face of the side of the building so that the windows will meet building code requirements. And this is an egress door that's serving the fire stair that's in this zone here. And the egress is out to the street along the side of the building. Rear facade. The rear facade is set back 10 feet from the rear lot line, and it's cut in on in this area here on the first and basement level. This portion is for a set of steps that come out of the basement and go into the backyard. And this is a small outdoor space, allowing for some larger windows into that basement. Back up to the plan to catch that. We're talking about this little area here. And then the right side of the building, there is no setback here on the, or cutout. There are no windows on this facade. However, there is some green wall material that's being planned for here that would correspond with one of our abutters decks that's very close to this project here. And a section. So here is the main entrance level, the commercial space. And you go either up half a level or down half a level into the basement unit or the upper units. And then this level is all the way through the building. And it continues that way up through the building. Part of the task is to offer some alternatives to the project, and so this is our first alternate. And what we've done here is we've filled in the space in the back of the building where we had the living room, small terrace, which allowed us to pull this wall at the top back to align with the entry of the building. So we no longer have a shadow in here, but this is all the same plane now. We've suggested some different material for the siding here, shiplap product as opposed to a lap siding product. And here's the rear elevation. So this window is now flush with the back of the building. And the second alternative is all the same maneuvers in the back of the building, but with a further reduction in the front of the building and making this a 2-story bay as opposed to a 3-story bay. In the front here, we have brought back like a second material so that there's a material change between this portion of the building that sets forward on the street and the entry wall of the building behind. So this would be a lap siding and this would be shiplap. That's another idea. And in the back, we've played around a little bit with a panel, a fiber cement board panel that would tie these windows together and make this and break up the wall of the rear elevation a bit. And some shadow studies. Casting, this is north is basically, this is north, this is south down here. So the shadows are being cast into our butters areas and out onto the street in the Equinox. The butters on Montgomery Avenue. Here's a summer shadow study. The yellow is a new shadow. And winter. And with that, I can turn it over to Katya. And Katya, what would you like me to start out with on
Just
your
the first
drawings?
page there, yeah, that's perfect, thank you. Thanks, Mark. I'm Katya Posadlo, principal at Verdant Landscape Architecture. We've made a few modifications since the last time that you saw this in December. I think you had seen this. This is our tree removal plan, which indicates the trees that are on site and that they will all need to be removed in order to build this new structure. Next slide, please. So this is our landscape plan and the roof deck plan on one page. If you want to zoom into the left one to begin. We're focused on 2 main goals, supporting residential living in this building, and then also increasing we're making lots of improvements, I should say, to the public realm, as you can see in the streetscape there. As Mark mentioned, there's an existing curb cut towards the left-hand side of our property and will be on our frontage. That's the existing one on the right. The one on the left is being closed. So the driveway that serves our current site will be closed, and therefore making the sidewalk contiguous and safer for everyone walking up and down the street. Also, to improve the aesthetics, we're proposing a new street tree and a generous tree well, a new short-term bike rack and a bench, as well as structural soil below the adjacent concrete pavements to support tree growth. As you know, trees need, I think in Somerville, they like 1,000 cubic feet of soil, so we try to achieve at least that. We're showing permeable unit paving along the left-hand side of the building to access that egress doorway from the left-hand side stairwell. And at the main front doors to the lobby and into the retail space, we'll also have special paving. The project is proposing new privacy fencing around the sides and the rear, but also at the rear there, we have some increased setback. I don't know, Mark, if you can remind me what the distance was before and now, if you can recall that, the actual dimensions. I don't have it noted on the plan what the dimensions were. But...
Yes, it's 10 feet to the face of the foundation, and with the extra insulation, it's 9 foot 8 inches from the property line, the outside face of the building.
Thank you. So previously we had proposed some very narrow fastigiate trees in a row along the back here. And it was desired to, and commented that, oh, can you please provide something with a little wider canopy? And as a result of this increased setback, we're able to provide something that's a little wider. So we're happy that we've been able to make that move and get a little bit more canopy cover in general. So we switched from sweet gum, fastigiate sweet gum to these oak, fastigiate oak variety that's noted on our plant list on the next page. But before we get there, let's go over to the right and see the roof deck. The residents will have shared access to this roof deck amenity, which is set back from the parapet so that it's not visible from the street. And it's surrounded by an extensive green roof system that will be not just sedum, but a few other varieties of perennials planted within that lightweight soil. The front half of the roof deck is where the utilities would be located. And there's also vegetated green roof around that zone as well. I think that summarizes that plan. If we could go to the next page, please. This illustrates some of the character of the materials that we're proposing throughout the site, including the previous pavers and the detail for those previous pavers. The image in the middle of the page shows an installation that we've done a couple times now in Somerville for a vault, transformer vault, and the unit pavers that are cut to fit around the vault covers. So there is going to be a transformer in the ground at the front entry, but I feel that it works quite nicely to have the unit pavers cut right around it, and it's all flush and works out very nicely. So we're kind of able to kill two birds with one stone, if you will, right at the front. Those are just some of the varieties of the trees and things shown in the other images. And then on the next plan, we can zoom to the roof deck materials and get a sense for some of the things we're proposing up there. I'm not 100% sure what kind of pedestal pavers or decking will be used, but it would be either your typical, modular 2x2 system or more of a sleeper and composite wood deck system. Next page, please. I think this is our final page that shows the green score calculations. And with the slightly larger setback along the rear, we've increased a little bit of green space and our green score has improved a little bit. So I think we're at 0.3 something before now we're at 0.405. And that's all I have. Thank you.
I have a question right off the bat, just because it's timely, sorry. So there was a green wall shown on the architectural plans, but that was not discussed at all in landscape, and we haven't had much luck with green walls in Somerville.
Let me clarify. Yeah, good question. We are proposing vines to be planted on a green screen. So not exactly a green wall where there'd be soil supported in planters up the wall or something. There'd be vines planted in the ground with a green screen attached to the building, or some sort of trellis system attached to the building and vines growing up. And we're proposing, I think we have Lonicera honeysuckle vine planted in this scheme. And I think that, the exact width and height of that green screen, we'd love it to be real tall. And I know that there really aren't evergreen vines per se, like twining vines in the Northeast, unless you get something that's sort of like an invasive species, five-leaf akebia. So I'm kind of hesitant to propose something like that. So I'd rather something more like honeysuckle or Campsis radicans or something. I don't know.
I'm gonna let Andrew speak to the rest of that, but I am gonna register my concern on the record that we don't have much luck with whenever this has been proposed. Inevitably, there's lots of times people come back to me and say, what can we do with this screen now that nothing will grow on it? So
I would note too that they are not counting it towards their green score, which I do appreciate, because I have similar concerns, which we can get into.
Yeah, we're not counting that as a green wall in the green score.
All right, Commission, it's your turn.
Do we want to go through questions as a group first?
Sure. So just one clarification. You mentioned that because of the size of the building, zoning district, 1,500 square foot minimum per unit applies. So that is the total gross area of the building that requirement applies to? Is that correct?
It's the total gross square footage of the building minus the commercial space.
Okay, great. Thanks.
And then just clarification question. The lot is, I understand that the buildings internally are stepped, but the lot itself is relatively flat. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then the yard in the back, is that through the exclusive use of the first floor residence?
Yes. Actually, the basement resident.
The proposed materials that we see on the screen here, like white at the bay window. Apologize if there's a vacuum in the background. The white at the bay window and the blue, and then at the retail and the red. Can you remind us
Sure.
what you're proposing there?
This is a fiber cement board panel system. This would be a lap fiber cement board, Allura with I think it was a slate blue color. And then down here, we're proposing aluminum, corrugated aluminum at the commercial structure signboard. And then this is a relatively new product. It's a artificial wood, but it's made out of rice. So it comes into the natural grain and texture. It's a Modern Mill is one of the companies that produces it. It's a tongue and groove, and it would be vertically mounted on the building.
And would that go all the way down to the ground, or would you have another material at the?
It's probably going to need
building?
it's probably going to need a water table, because I don't think it would be a good idea to dye it into the grade.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
probably be an 8-inch either concrete or a granite tile if it's visible.
Sorry, just remind me the material cladding the commercial area.
That's aluminum, a corrugated aluminum.
Okay.
Do we have any images just for context to see the material a little bit better?
Let me see if it got rendered on the elevation. I'm not sure this is going to be that instructive for you, but it would be sheets that would have a joint line at the floor plates, and it would be fastened from the outside into the structure of the wall.
So did I
So
get
the-
that right? It will have exposed fasteners?
Yes, it will have exposed fasteners.
And the joint lines are uniform, so there's one joint line at each floor all the way as opposed to staggered?
Yes. Well, we have it at the principal floor lines here. And there would be one here too.
And for the corrugation depth and kind of style, can you? I'm not sure if you have a drawing of that, but what can you describe that? Be more of like.
Well, the corrugated. What we were thinking is that it would be the wavy corrugated, sheet product. There are different profiles that would be available. Addis International is one of the companies that we go to when we are looking for this kind of material. I could pull up their website and we could look at their product if that's something you'd like to do. Should I do that?
I didn't want to kind of derail the conversation with the search,
Yeah.
but I think having I guess some sort of a profile would help, but just don't want to pause our discussion with the search or anything.
I think it'd be good, Mark, if you want to pull it up while we're talking about other stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
I have another question about the unit in the back. I'm concerned about the livability of the basement unit where it doesn't even have that little outdoor terrace or big windows, or it feels like it's it's fairly compromised.
I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah, I mean, there's it's not shown in this drawing, but they're showing landscaping around here, and if this is kind of meant for egress, I'm just wondering, you know, is that landscape gonna survive? Is that the proper egress path?
So okay, so that is the egress for the unit, is to come back up through that stairs, through the landscape.
We have
That-
the two means of egress out of the basement unit. One, and they're both off the hallway. This is an egress window for the bedroom. But this unit can get out of the building by entering into the landing portion of this fire stair here, or it can go up and out.
So the
front door.
stairs off that living room are not considered one of the egresses.
No, I don't believe they're required for egress. We just wanted to be able to get at the backyard for somebody.
But to Tim's point, sort of the egress window well would be traversing plant life for the length of the stairwell to get to the walkway that is the official egress.
Yes, that's true. This window would be on this plan here at grade. It would be right here, and you were talking about this landscape here going back to this pathway, I believe, right?
Yeah.
we could put some-
Yeah,
put some
we did
stone
not put
things.
pavers in there. We were thinking that was just ground cover, so it's not a formal path. It's just an egress to get out, and then in an emergency or from maintenance or something, you come out the back and do something in the landscape, but there's no path. We didn't want to pave more unnecessarily.
But if you get out there in emergency, you're like tromping through ferns, like trying to get out through ground cover. And if for
Yeah.
some reason you went up the back stairs, you're just sort of trapped in the backyard. You can't get out at all, really.
Just walking through the side alley, bark mulch and ferns, like you say, yeah.
Yeah. And then hopping over the window
Hopping
well.
up. Yeah. And if you go to the other side, it's only 2 feet wide. Like you're not getting through that.
No. That's not the,
On the alternate version that you had, it didn't look like the small terrace at the basement level was there. It looked like there are only clear story windows into the kitchen area because it bumped out. Is that
that's
right?
true. That's true. The alternatives both took this space and put it into the unit. And then we used that space elsewhere to modify the massing in the front of the building.
Oh, so it's just a flip. So because the clean lines of the one alternate, I personally kind of like. So I'd sort of like to talk about those if we could.
Sure.
Which alternate is that?
But just before we go off of the stair from that basement unit, I get the egress window and having landscape around that. I mean, as long as it's traversable, I don't think that's an atypical situation where you would need to traverse landscape out of an egress window. But I wonder about the stair coming from out of the living room and up. Are you walking into a space that is intended to be occupied by the residents of the basement unit?
No, I was not designing that exterior space to be a place to occupy with a patio or with chairs. It was planted with trees that are, because they're narrow, their branching is fairly dense. And then there's some shrubs below them. So I wasn't planning for, I mean, you're able to be there and stand there and sit there. Maybe you could probably pop a chair open and, you know, sit there, but it wasn't a patio or anything like that.
Then
I think
what's the
that's-
purpose of the stair then?
That's my question too, is it's a lot of effort to get up there if you can't use it.
I believe it's maintenance, so you don't have to remove a fence or get access from your neighbors to perhaps replant a tree or
You
clean
have to
up
go through,
leaves.
you have to go through someone's unit to,
Yeah, so you're
Like-
not replanting a tree by taking a tree through that unit.
No, that's true, but just to get there and repair the fence perhaps, or I don't know.
even like cleaning up, you know, dead branches or
Yeah.
something, gonna come back through the unit.
I mean,
I don't know, we can take a look at the utility of that. Mark and I can think through
Yeah.
that a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, we're not on landscape yet, but I think that's my major concern is that it seems fairly unmaintainable back there. You can't access it really at all. And I have major concerns about the 2-foot wide planting area that's occurring on the north side of the building between a 6-foot privacy fence. I mean, my desk is greater than 2 feet wide. It just doesn't seem like enough space to actually have viable planting in that zone. And it's not wide enough to move through really as a person either. We know the foundation wall is going to, you know, be underneath that to some degree too, so it's not going to have great drainage. And I think to Sarah's point, it's also the space where this green screen is showing, which, you know, at the very least, let's assume that like vines would do well here. That thing has some sort of volume once it's attached to the building, which narrowing up that space even more. So that whole side to me feels really kind of problematic.
You think that it would be less problematic if this fence was not installed on this side of the building?
I just think that needs more space. I mean, I'm not here to solve the problem, but I'm just here to identify it. So and the green screen, I understand the kind of the point behind it, trying to soften that elevation and make it a little bit more viable to the neighbors. But I think to Sarah's point, it's really probably not going to actually grow vines. It's certainly not a vines are tough in this environment, and this is not the nicest version of an environment to get them started. Sort of 6 feet, you know, canyon of darkness to get those vines started in the first place.
Yeah, and to be honest, the reason we had thought about the green screen was because we recognized the neighbor to the rear right has a small wooden porch built right up to the property line. And as it exists now, there are trees on our side, which makes them feel like they're in this little treed area. And we recognized that they would be losing some of those trees. But now that the building has been moved back a little bit more from the rear property line, I think their porch will actually have greenery right next to it instead of before, because the building was set, you know, the corner of the building was right next to their porch before. So I think that they are going to be set back even further. In other words, I'm wondering the utility of that green screen, and if there's some hesitations about it in general, maybe it's not a feature we need to include.
To me, I can't really speak for the architects, but I think the green screen is trying to soften that elevation, which that elevation is just blank. And I understand that it's the zoning tells us that there can be another building next to it of that height, and that makes sense. But in the intermediary period, like that elevation is like not great. That's some rough stuff. And if I were the neighbors, you know, having to live with that in the intermediate period, like I would be pretty unhappy. There needs to be something else on that, just something than just blank. Especially, I mean, you're going to see this from Broadway, not just the neighbors. Like this is a pretty visible location within the city, and you take that green screen away, and you've got a facade of nothing for a huge amount of space.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
but
think-
there, I mean, there could very well be architectural articulation of some description, but none of
Yeah.
that's.
I think that's a great point, Andrew and Sarah. And I was going to go there as well. It feels like the green screen's being used more as an architectural device to break up the long flat facade here. And you know, like Andrew said, understand that it's essentially a zero lot line condition. But it does feel like they're, you know, the front of the building facing Broadway feels well developed. The bays, the stepping, the kind of vertical proportion of it. The other side of the building feels, you know, also in keeping with that proportionally. This side just feels very underdeveloped. And it seems like there's some type of architectural articulation that is needed here.
We can certainly look at different materials that would create different geometries on the wall, including something like various kinds of trim that would project enough that would cast some shadow on the wall, so that there would be a play, a little bit of a light and material and shadow on that wall. It's too close to the property line for windows. We would need to reduce, we would need to get that wall 5 feet off the property line to start putting windows into it. So it doesn't feel like, to me, given what the square footage requirements are for the building, like we will be able to do much with windows, but we could do things
You could do
with,
faux windows though, right? At least to do some sort of articulation, some sort of breakup.
all windows. Yeah, if it's not a real window, then certainly we can do something like that.
I'm not, I guess that would be one strategy. But I wonder if there's something that's more and authentic to the rest of the building and the internal layout, the overall architecture of it. It could be something that's, you know, material variation along that planar surface, but I think it would be even more successful if there was something volumetric that was happening there. If there were the opportunity to step in a portion of that facade, maybe in the center, it looks like you just have a couple of closets and such there in the center and the interior layout. But you know, there's a building in Union Square that went up recently. It's a brick building, so very different materiality, but it has a pretty big blank facade right on the plaza. But they put some pilasters on that facade, and you know, it's marginally successful, but it's certainly more successful than it would be if it was just a blank wall.
Yeah, I think I get the point.
Mark, the faux wood the composite wood material, is that coplanar with the blue
Yes.
facade?
Yes, it's all coplanar right now, but we can, there's room to maneuver in the thickness of the insulation on that wall. You know, when we think about the overall R value of this building, we have a lot more wall than window, you know, in thinking about the whole building envelope, you know, in a totality. So I think, you know, we could use the thickness of the insulation that's between the exterior sheathing and the material that's cladding the insulation. And we could, you know, go from 2 inches to 4 inches. And our R values would change a little bit for the portions of the wall if we did that. But I think, you know, given the number of windows, the percentage of glass to the percentage of wall area in this building, we probably have that latitude to still meet our passive house requirements.
Yeah, I was wondering, Sarah, if like something like a mural in lieu of having that A space in the front, because it's kind of not the greatest. It's just pretty small A space because it's only 5% of the building, right?
Yeah, it's a little, I mean, it just happens to be like 6 point something percent of the commercial space, but it's
I think it's just a way
certainly
to,
small.
way to liven
Yeah,
up that side.
that's definitely gonna be a conversation with ISD. That's not something that we can sort of resolve right
Mhm.
with this committee right here.
We talk through the alternates, the alternate configurations.
Okay, this is the first alternate, and the difference between this alternate and the second alternate is basically there's a 3-story bay that's being proposed on the front of the building here, and the same material all the way around. And then on the second alternate, we've changed the material here from the rest of the material in the back. It wraps the corner here and then dies off against the aluminum siding. And it's also a 2-story bay instead of a 3-story bay.
Is the original proposal your preference? Or the
Uh,
base?
Well, that's certainly what we had developed. We spent all the time, we spent a lot of our time developing that scheme. I think when we sat down and we started to think about, okay, what are the alternative? How do we come up with alternatives for this, since it's a tight site and a big building. And
It looked like on the blue version, though, it wasn't, I'm gonna call it the main facade, the main mass. What you've got here in the tan, it looked like there was a
yes,
a
there is.
projection forward. It wasn't that same, yeah,
Right
right
here.
there,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so in both alternatives, we took this wall and we pulled it back to this plane. Sort of clarified the mass between two objects. And this is a little less clear as to what's going on, but there's more shadow, so there's more play of light.
I would probably say, just in terms of the massing between the two schemes, I think the scheme in blue is successful. It's nice and simple. I think the option to change materials from the projecting bay to kind of like the bay that was behind it, and then have another plane that's a third material. It seemed to be a lot of change on a small facade. So I think I thought this scheme, in terms of strategy of how you were applying massing and materials, was most successful. I did have some questions on the selection of materials, the vertical rice material, and then the siding. And my only concern is the guidelines are suggesting to avoid horizontal and vertical siding materials for MR5. So I was wondering if there were alternate materials that you had considered.
You mean something that wasn't like a lap siding or a shiplap
Yeah,
siding, but more
yeah.
of a panel?
Yeah.
No, we hadn't gone there. It seems like it's to me, it'd be more successful with the horizontal boards. This vertical siding could be mounted horizontally to avoid having some boards vertical and some boards horizontal, for instance. But to make this all panelized, I mean, we could look at that. But I think what's going to happen is it's going to look more institutional and less residential.
Yeah, I think part of the intent of the design guidelines is typically the MR5 building isn't on such a narrow lot. It may be for like a larger building, and to use such kind of like a residential material on a larger building, it could sometimes look strange. Given that this is a residential building with a fairly small facade on Broadway, I could see applications of it. I wasn't sure if the corrugation, the metal on the side, and the wood, and then the horizontal lap siding, if they were fighting each other, if the corrugated metal, which seems to be more of like a commercial product and
Mhm.
more modern texture and application versus the traditional kind of lap siding, if that kind of dialogue was conflicting with each other in terms of styles.
Yeah, as an alternate for the corrugated metal, I suppose we could do the fiber cement board panel here, and so reduce the number of materials on the building by one material. I think that it does sort of, this particular facade has these recesses for the windows, and therefore it sort of sets up this mass to be handled a little differently than the other parts, which I thought was a good idea, because it helped to break up the scale of the building, that big wall. But it could do the same thing with a panel, a fiber cement panel with, aluminum reglet joints.
Yeah, I mean, the material on the front, I'm just thinking like the metal, it seems out of place a little bit given the material quality itself and how the rest of the building is treated. So I'm just wondering if maybe the front material could be applied on the side as well, if that might be an option.
Are we
might-
talking
Or is it the
about,
wood look? Is it,
Yeah.
I mean, could it be the wood look material carrying up the building? So it's not just at the ground floor?
It could be that too, yeah.
this is a handsome product. I think it would look
Yeah.
quite nice.
Yeah, I think that's a good observation that Tim's made. I think I understand why you varied the material on that side, and that's a good decision. But maybe simplifying the material palette and just using that would look material maybe a good option. And is there a way of kind of grounding that mass then, connecting it to what's below? Because I think it would be weird if you saw,
Yeah.
a piece of the building that only touches in one little corner.
I'm
Is there
gonna
a
see
way
if
of
I can,
bringing this down and grounding it?
I can do this.
There you go. There you go.
I totally forgot that we could draw now. I'm like, what magic are you doing?
Some joint lines.
Yeah, no, that's.
Yeah, I think it grounds it. I think I like that suggestion.
Right?
And I think anything you can do to, I think within the, and I realize this is schematic at this point, but as you develop it, I think anything you can do to refine the level of detail around the window openings within the field of the horizontal lap siding, because I agree. I think for a building of this scale, residential building, even though the guidelines kind of discourage the use of horizontal siding, I think it's an appropriate use here. Another building that I'll often reference is, there's bad examples of horizontal lap siding, and then there's the building at the corner of Bow Street and Somerville Avenue, 4-story historic building there that's recently renovated, and like beautiful example of horizontal clad,
There's
horizontal
also
lap siding building, commercial square.
there's other examples of this kind of narrow, tall, 4-story residential building on Broadway. So it's not really out of place on Broadway. There's some older buildings on Broadway like this, but they have a pitched roof.
Yeah. One other thing I'll just mention, I think there's a couple other examples of buildings on Broadway that meet the ground at the sidewalk level in a really, really poor way. And I think what you're showing here, the commercial storefront is nicely proportioned. Looks like it has the potential to be nicely detailed. But I think just one of the things we may want to consider including as recommendations as a committee is just ensuring, that water table, that there's a stone base or whatever it is at the base of the building along Broadway. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think you're showing
There
that
it
already.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Perfect.
think it
That's
helps when you
beautiful.
zoom in. I think that's convincing in terms of what it's trying to do.
It avoids the one at Temple and Broadway.
Temple and Broadway, they left out the stone at the base. It's bad.
Don't
They
talk
left out,
about that building. Don't talk
they
about
left
that
out-
building.
Yeah, they left out like half the building.
That's
So-
why the planning board will never approve fascia brick again, as in, thin set.
So I think, would it be fair to just briefly summarize, or are there other things people want to talk about?
I did not have other items I wanted to address.
No,
No,
I think
but I'd
that's it.
say, I see you have the bike parking. I mean, I wish there was a way to provide for a building that's providing no vehicular parking, the bike parking becomes even more important because that's going to be some of the residents' means of transportation. And I see it's in the lower level and there's a path to get there via elevator and stair. So, I think that's fine. I wish there were a way to provide it at ground level and have it be even more usable and accessible without needing to carry the bike on the elevator or lug it up the stairs. But you don't have the room at the ground level. So I think as you continue to develop the ground floor plan, making sure that path is very clear and usable is important.
In the front elevation, there was suggestion of a gate. And I saw it reflected in one of the landscape plans, but it wasn't in the architectural plan. Just wondering if I think there's not much room there to install a door and a gate. I was just wondering what you were proposing.
I don't think I had actually shown a gate in that location. I like the idea of it to privatize that walkway, make sure, trash doesn't blow down the little alley, if you will. But I'm not sure it's needed. What do we have for a setback there? Mark, is it like 5 feet?
Yeah, I think it should be 5 feet from here to here. I hadn't asked for a gate there. I think that's
Oh.
something that the person who rendered the elevation we
It would-
need to
on-
combine.
Landscape plan L3, it's noting 6-foot high privacy fence.
I think it says that it's a 3-foot space as well.
L3, did you
Zoom
say?
into the bottom left there.
There you go.
Oh, I did show a gate. Forgotten. Well, I think a 4-foot gate would fit in there if we want one.
Yeah, I think it, it's a busy street. It would probably, benefit the residents. I was just kind of, since it was viewable from the street, I was wondering what that would want to be.
Mhm.
Well, it's probably okay to keep it part of the wood system of the perimeter fence, but it will have to swing out as opposed to in because of the egress path.
Okay, we'll flip that around. Yeah, good
And
point.
yeah, you would need to be 3 feet wide.
I call it a 4-foot gate, but the pathway is only 3 feet. That's just because in order to install a fence, each
Yeah.
element you install in the landscape takes up a few more inches. So
Right.
we were being conservative with the room we had left over for a minimum walkway of 3 feet, but there might be a little more room
Yeah.
than that.
So I would double check that egress width
Mhm.
requirement.
I had a question, maybe this is more for Sarah. We've seen a number of projects lately that are proposing no parking. This is one of them. I guess it is within the half-mile transit zone. It's not super close to a T-stop. But I'm wondering if there's any effort kind of citywide for developments that are not providing any parking for residents to provide access to shared cars, either Zipcar or through other private companies.
It's recommended, and a lot of the larger projects, I don't know on this project yet as to whether they've, there will still have to be a mobility management plan. I'm using the wrong terminology for, mobility's process right now. Because they usually look at bicycle movements and pedestrian movements, not just vehicular. So that will probably be part of the process. There are, this building, if parking is not required and not provided, then the residents will not be able to get on-street parking permits either. So that will be further restricted. So the short answer is, well, that was a long answer for the short. I'm not sure yet, Tim.
Okay.
I would note that the city's goal of whatever 75% of trips in Somerville not being by car by 2040, I mean, having no parking here is something that the city's trying to encourage. I would also note that diagonally across the street is going to be the whole new Old Star Market site redevelopment, the whole 40B project, which has no parking on site either. So that is
Yeah, and
certainly a trend.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. But 75% of the trips not being by car still leaves 25% of the trips by car.
Right, but
And
if
I
you have a shared car, then that's a trip by vehicle. I think they're trying to discourage.
Right.
I
But
live
think,
around the corner and I don't have parking, and we survive.
Yeah, the bus goes right down in front of the building on a dedicated bus lane. It's pretty effective.
Yep.
Okay, Andrew, did you want to talk a little bit more about the landscape before we start? I've been scribbling notes, but, or do we want to move into a couple of architectural votes first?
To take compliments on the roof terrace, I think it looks very nice. I would like it if that back terrace were usable in some way. If it was serving sort of a little bit more than hitting green score. If that last unit that has access to it has an outdoor space that is some amount of paving that they can use, especially with the, again, sort of to have the stair come out of the unit and just dead end at planting seems very odd.
Well, I think we do have wiggle room now, so we'll take a look at that.
Okay.
Adding
And I appreciate the sort of upfront nature about the trees. It is, I mean, you have to kind of note, it is pretty sad to lose 210 caliper inches and replace it with 10 is not great. And especially with the volume of building that's going in, which is again, not the landscapes issue, but with the volume of building that's going in, that 210 calipers cannot be replaced on this site really ever again. So that's not great.
To that point, thank you, Andrew. I do recommend that the team reach out to the city arborist because there's a process to remove that many trees.
I have emailed Allison and she has recommended that they will review the plan once it gets uploaded to CitizenServe.
That's not, so we have the actual application
Yeah.
after the second neighborhood meeting, after we're through with you. So yeah, we got a little ways to go.
I do see a number of them are invasive species.
Yeah, that I was going to say that as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. They're not great trees.
Yeah.
No, they're just trees.
They are mature trees. So.
For sure. No, I'm not denying that.
Okay, so what I've heard, so we need to vote on the preferred massing and facade options. So if I have heard correctly, can I get a motion from the commission to accept the preferred massing option?
So moved.
I will second.
Moved by Tim Talon, seconded by Tim Hood. All right, thank you. Roll call vote. Tim Talon,
Yes.
Tim Hood,
Yes.
and Andrew Abba.
Yes.
All right, thank you. So we have a preferred option. The notes that I have on the facade are the preferred option with eliminating the corrugated aluminum to be replaced with the wood look paneling. And the north wall to be further articulated in place of the green screen.
I guess I would maybe rather than saying in place of this green screen, if the other commissioners are comfortable, maybe we provide the option to include the green screen or not.
Okay.
Given that I think this is a conversation with neighbors as well. And would you be comfortable with that, Andrew? For that to be potentially a component of the project as the design continues?
I guess we would need to see what the intended green screen is, because that's what we're going to be looking at. So if it's, I mean, what is the thing? It's an architectural element as opposed to a planting element. It just needs to be acknowledged as such, because there's a low likelihood that the planting will take on it.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we do this condition, so eliminate the corrugated aluminum and replace with the wood look paneling is one. The second one would be provide architectural articulation on the north facing wall.
Um, that sounds good. And then maybe there's a third point addressing the green screen.
The green screen. I want to make sure that we express this as an architectural element rather than, to Andrew's point, than a landscape element.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just don't call it a green screen, like call it a, I don't know.
It's basically
Yeah.
a screen. Yeah, an architectural
Yeah.
screen.
Well,
Yeah.
trellis.
Yeah.
Full
Yeah.
screen.
I think there would be a way to, soften that face of the building in relation to the deck of the neighbor, with architectural material as opposed to planting. Yeah, so, that would, you could imagine some vertical, wood slats mixed in with the flat wood slats, and the whole thing would be softer because of how the light would play on it. For instance.
Yeah, I think there's options that do not use vegetation, or that's it's not a vegetated screen. I think there's an architectural screen solution out there somewhere.
So how about architecturally articulate the north wall with varied materials or metal screening?
Yeah, I guess the only reason I brought it up, I just wouldn't want, if that planted element has been part of conversations with that neighbor, this commission isn't just removing that element from the project because we don't like it. I think it just want to be clear that there's concerns
but
about liability of it, that it's not.
Yeah, but the commission is
work.
also, pointing out that if the neighbor has been promised something green growing up the side of the building, that's probably not going to happen. And I think that is part of our purview.
Yeah, I don't know about
Yes,
promise.
absolutely.
I mean, we had a neighborhood meeting. This really didn't come up as my recollection.
The other thing that I would like to recommend, just because as I've heard you all discussing it, the third condition would be to come back with material palette for review.
Yes, please. Yeah, I have a really hard time kind of understanding what the quality of the materials are that are just within the rendering. It's a little hard to tell what it actually looks like.
Yes, I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, all right, so I actually want to back up a little bit. So as far as the facade goes, I think our vote needs to be the preferred option with just the first two conditions we've been talking about, because those are specifically facade related. So that would be replacing the corrugated aluminum with the wood look paneling, and then to architecturally articulate the north wall by varying materials or using a metal screen as an option. Does that sound right? All right, can I get a motion as such?
So motion.
Motion by Andrew, did I get a second?
I will second.
All right, second by Tim Hood, thank you. Roll call vote, Tim Talon,
Yes.
Tim Hood,
Yes.
Andrew Abba.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So that's our preferred facade. We do need to take a vote on whether the guidelines have been met, but I wanted to bring up, there were two other things that I noted, and whether these are need to be included as conditions or part of the recommendation for further study. One was the stone base at the water table, especially along with commercial space facing Broadway. Whether that is handled in the material palette is enough. Also then the gate at the egress path. The wood material and the need to swing out. I don't think we need to condition the need to swing out because it's an egress path that'll happen without us. But I wanted to bring up those two pieces to see how you wanted to move forward with those.
I think if the stone base can be included specifically as a design recommendation.
All right. So let's do the vote. First of all, do we think the design guidelines have been met?
So it seems like, and you can correct me, Tim Hood noted that the horizontality, that falls outside of the design guidelines, right? So
I think we were noting how it falls out of the design guidelines, but there's a certain quality and character to the scale of the building, and to the way it's presented, where in this application, I think it would be acceptable, and I welcome other opinions.
But I guess with that in mind, like, wouldn't we vote no on whether or not it falls within the design guidelines? And then we can note that we think that there should be an exception or something like that.
I think
'Cause
we,
if we're
this-
just,
this come up
if our job is just to tell if it's in the guidelines or no, we seem to have identified that it doesn't, which
Right.
who cares? It still gets past us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the way we've handled this on other projects, and I'm thinking of the building farther up Broadway, near Lombardi, which had horizontal board siding, as we noted it, we highlighted it as a design guideline, and then noted that, you know, in this instance, we thought it was acceptable. That the guideline had been reviewed and we thought the material as presented with further articulation and detailing and attention to detail was acceptable.
Okay, either way, doesn't matter to me. Either way, it's getting, either way, it's moving on, whether or not we say that it's achieved the guidelines or not.
But the board voting, I think, would want to know that if you say it meets the guidelines or not, that you are actually not having a problem with that particular issue. I think that would be helpful for the board to know that, however you do it. If you vote yes and just put a little footnote to it, or however you want to do it. The explanation is important.
I'm agnostic. I guess I would defer to Sarah's guidance in terms of the letter of the law.
All right, so we can say that the guidelines, the guideline regarding, all right, we'll do an exception. So we can vote to accept that the design guidelines have been met with the exception of the horizontal lap siding, which the UDC finds is well detailed and acceptable.
I think that does it.
Well, I think it would be is acceptable if well detailed.
Okay, is acceptable if well detailed. And then that will be determined further when we talk about the material palette. Okay. All right. So can I get a motion that the design guidelines have been met with the exception of the horizontal clapboard siding being acceptable if it's well detailed and will be reviewed at time the material palette is submitted?
The motion.
Second.
Motion by Andrew, second by Tim. Roll call vote. Tim Talon,
Yes.
Tim Hood,
Yes.
Andrew Abba.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So then we need one more vote for the I'm losing my words, the preferred design guidelines. That the additional guidance that we want to provide is to make sure that there is a stone base at the water table along the commercial space facing Broadway. And then we do need to document that we need to have the material palette reviewed by this commission prior to building permit.
So motion.
Motion by Andrew. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Second by Tim Hood. Roll call vote. Tim Talon,
Yes.
Tim Hood,
Yes.
and Andrew Abba.
Yes.
All right, thank you. And Madison, I think those are all the votes we have to take on this evening, correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you, team. Congratulations, you are over this hurdle. We will see you with materials in hopefully a couple months.
Looking forward
Thanks
to it.
very
Thank
much
you
for
so
your
much.
time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, all right, and then we need one more motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
By Andrew, seconded by Tim. Roll call vote. Tim Talon,
Yes.
Tim Hood,
Yes.
and Andrew Abba.
Yes.
All right, meeting is adjourned at 7:31 PM. Thank you all.
Bye,
Thank you.
y'all.